What are you going to do with your last picks in a fantasy basketball draft? Are you going to take the boring guys, Harrison Barnes? Of course you're not. You're going to take swings. You're going to go upside flyers, and you're going to find some names in this show, Michael Bolton.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. My name is Josh Lloyd and I am in Brunswick and a footerskray. And I am also the lead fantasy basketball analyst at basketballmonster.com. And you can find me on Twitter, as always, at redrock_bball. On Instagram TikTok at redrock_bball. And on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Thank you for making Locked On Fantasy Basketball your first listen every day. We are free and we are available, of course, on all platforms. So I dropped a Roto Real Money draft earlier today. I dropped an auction mock draft earlier today. We're going to have some more. I had a points mock draft yesterday. Going to have another couple mock drafts coming, some more little videos going as well. We're 7 days away from the NBA season tipping off, and it's pretty exciting times. Drafts coming up over the next couple of days as well, which is exciting. So you know my general strategy, I hope. But if you are just stumbling across this video, welcome. I'll have you covered all season for fantasy basketball. Don't worry about that part of it. But what I want you to know is that if you are in your 12-team league, or even when you're in your 14-team league, your bench players don't take boring. Take a swing. Take the guy that might jump 40 spots. Take the guy that should get you 30 spots of value. Now, sometimes when the boring guys who are the 120th best player fall to 170, then that is value. That is upside. That is a swing. But otherwise, take the Fliers. I've got 19 players here who I think it's probably more towards 12-teamers, but some of them are going to be their last rounds of 14-teamers as well, that I want you to have a crack at, grab onto your team, and if you drop them, it doesn't matter. What we're doing is trying to find some options of guys who might blow up. Let's start with number 19. These are roughly in order. And you know what? You might go through this and go, well, what about this guy? What about this guy? That is true. I could probably give you 50 names. I brought it down to 19, and sometimes there'll be a guy that you think, well, this guy might fall here. But as a general rule, I tried to find guys ranked outside the top 120, top 130, with ADPs outside of that range as well, to be able to see, in a general case, who's available. Wasn't super confident in this one, but ZIAIRE Williams in Memphis. He's ranked 300. Those rankings, you'll see this on every slide if you are watching here on YouTube. That's Yahoo rank, ESPN rank, Fantrax rank. So you'll see ZIAIRE is ranked outside of the top 260 in every single league, meaning that they all believe he's not a draftable player in 20-team formats. He might start in Memphis. Will he be awesome? I don't know. He was shithouse last season, but he is a former top 10 pick who's looked better in preseason. But that's what we're looking for. This one probably skews more towards 14-team leagues when we're looking at upside value in those sort of scenarios. But when you're sitting there in round 15, that doesn't exist, round 13, and you're debating, like, who am I taking here? Is it Harrison Barnes? Sorry, Barnes is going to cop so many strays. Do you take a flyer on ZIAIRE? Maybe. Because what if ZIAIRE actually has a good stretch while JAR is out? This is more geared towards 14-teamers, though. That's number 19. Number 18, you might think that this is too low, but I'm putting Johnny Kuminga on here. Kuminga is ranked 165 on Yahoo, 176 ESPN, 167 Fantrax. He's a high usage reserve. The reason that I've got Kuminga down this low, still take a crack at him for sure, is that the path to a big role is not there. It might be there. Maybe injuries happen. But otherwise, he is at the very best the 7th man on this team. And that would mean that he would be ahead of Gary Payton, Moses Moody, Dario Saric in the rotation. And he probably is. But he's a player that relies on high usage. He's not going to be generating good rebounds or assists or steals or blocks as a general rule. Efficiency sometimes is a problem. And he sort of has thrived with 33% usage through the preseason, which he won't get in the regular season, most likely. But Kuminga is worth having a look at. It's just that often we want to look at skills, ability, permanent value, plus what's the path? How do you get there? And I couldn't argue that he's going to take over from Clay or Wiggins. I can't do that. They might get hurt, but I can't argue that he's just got that clear pathway to be able to slide in front of them. I just don't think that's realistic. Let's look at Indiana. And I've got JARACE Walker on this list. Walker's first preseason game was fantastic. The next couple were not fantastic. Some of them were okay, some of them were bad. He's ranked Richie Beno actually, 222 on Yahoo, 177 ESPN, and a staggeringly bad 422nd on Fantrax. That doesn't make any sense. I would be stunned if Obi Toppin isn't the opening night starter at power forward. Walker is probably the backup, but they took this guy at 8, and he's got unbelievable defensive versatility, and I think they'd love him to start. Now, Carlisle may not do that all season, but what if Toppin struggles? Toppin's never been good. And what if JARACE comes out and plays really well? He'd probably have to eat some bad performances for a week or two, and we want to see where it trends, but it's at least worth considering, because unlike Kuminga, there is a pathway very clearly for JARACE Walker being a starter. It's not hard to get there. You replace Obi Toppin, and then he gets 30 minutes a night and maybe a steal, a block, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, 12 points, a 3. Maybe. It's not likely to happen. We don't know what Rick Carlisle is going to do. But the upside, the fantasy value overall, is probably there for JARACE. Today's episode is brought to you by the JACE case from JACE Medical. You don't want to be in a situation where you are stuck without having access to medical care. Whether we saw the recent fires in Hawaii, there's earthquakes, we've got hurricanes and tornadoes and all that stuff happening in Florida and all through the world. And sometimes you get cut off from supplies to get to the doctor. And if you desperately need medication, including these life-saving antibiotics, you want to have them at home. That's what JACE Medical and the JACE case provides. They've also got a gift card option as well, so you can get a gift card for family members if they live importantly, like in a remote area where things might be dangerous and they might be in a scenario where they might not be able to get to a doctor's surgery or a hospital. So the JACE case has those 5 life-saving antibiotics. You can also add additional add-on medications to it as well, depending on what you need for your family, and it helps you be prepared. Go to jacemedical.com, enter the code LOCKEDON at checkout for a $20 discount on your order. The promo code is LOCKEDON at jasemedical.com. Okay, let's go on to number, 16? Yeah, I've lost my little tracker here. We are going on to number 16. Now, again, the order is relatively rough. It's not absolutely set in stone. Judge it based on what your team is and what you might need if this guy pops off a lot of the time. These guys are pretty close. I'm going to go Jaden Hardy in this spot. Why? Again, what is the pathway for Hardy doing it over, say, a Kuminga? Well, Hardy, for some reason, is not even ranked on ESPN. That doesn't make sense. He's 209th on Yahoo, 258 on Fantrax. What is the path? Both Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic are heading into the season with some sort of injury cloud. Kyrie with a nebulous groin soreness. Luka with a calf issue after dealing with a hip issue, I believe, through the World Cup. And if one of those blokes misses, this guy will probably get 25 off the bench and have 30% usage. Just think Cam Thomas, but good. Hardy also is a young player with upside, and the future of Tim Hardaway and this team. What was that thing from Tim Hardaway yesterday, by the way? I tweeted it out, put it on my Instagram. Nick from Locked On Mavs got the quote there from Tim. And Hardaway was saying, no, I haven't actually spoken to Jason Kidd about my role this season at all. Jace, not Jace Case. Jace might want to say something to one of your players, like, what do you expect him to do? Now, I know I won't say a fact, but pretty close to it, that they have been trying to trade Tim Hardaway all off season, with Curry and Hardy, the guys getting those minutes. So there's that pathway for him to get 24 off the bench anyway. And if Kyrie gets hurt, or Luka gets hurt, you might get 30 games of 25 minutes for Hardy. You might get 40. It might not work out, but there is gigantic upside. And there is a path, multiple ways, for him to get that playing time. The next guy we take a look at is the 15th guy on this list, and it is someone who I do not believe is very good. I will simply say this. I don't think TALEN HORTON-TUCKER is a very good player. He's ranked 188th on Yahoo. He's 128th on ESPN for some reason. 215th on Fantrax. But it looks like he will start at point guard for Utah. He was putting up pretty strong numbers at the end of last season, but part of the issue is there's low threes, bad field goals, bad free throws, high turnovers if you care about that sort of thing. He can be a solid enough rebounder and a good assist player, but he also did that damage last season when everybody was out. I don't know how he makes any sense in the starting lineup, and I feel like if he is in there, he'll be a placeholder, keeping it warm until they're ready to hand it over to, spoiler alert, someone I'll talk about later, KEYONTE George. But even if you got 2 weeks of value and he averages 6 assists, 14, 4, and 6, 1.2 steals, it's pretty good. And then they bench him, you drop him, you move on. As much as I don't like the guy as a player, that's not fair. I just don't think he's particularly good as a player. That's maybe more accurate. If they're going to start him, then I'm going to react to that. I think eventually talent wins out, and that means he moves to the bench. But if he's going to start, he's going to start. And we have a crack at it. Next up, we go to the 14th player on this list. It is Robert Covington for the Clippers. I do not know whether A, Covington will start, or B, even be in the rotation. I don't know. But the other options there are Marcus Morris, Nico Batum, and KJ Martin. And what I do know is that if it does get given to Covington, he has the fantasy value. Not Batum, definitely not Morris, and less so KJ Martin. Covington was running quite a bit with the starters in the last preseason game, even though Batum started. And while the likelihood of Covington nailing down a 30-minute-a-night role is probably pretty low, if he just finds 24, or he gets even a crack early on at 30, he pays off picking him in the last round really quickly. He's got that amazing fantasy skill set. And we saw it flashed a couple of times last season and in the preseason game that he started. He's going to be up and down with his shooting. We know this. He's not as much for points leagues as he is for category leagues. But just the sniff of a starting opportunity for Bob Covington should make him at least, pick your nose up and go, hey, what's that? What does that I smell? It's Covington. Maybe you don't smell him, but you know what I mean. Look at the 13th guy on this list, and it is, for one reason and one reason alone, he was the number 2 pick in the draft, and that's Brandon Miller. It doesn't matter whether he should have been the number 2 pick in the draft or not. He was. The situation there in Charlotte is shitful for him, but it got a little less shitful with whatever is happening with Miles Bridges, which I still don't know what is going on there. Miller's ranked 177th, 153rd in ESPN. That's 177 Yahoo. 431 in Fantrax. Nonsense. The reason that I've considered him is he's the number 2 pick. I think that he might get a boost in the later season. You look at a situation where Bridges doesn't play and Hayward gets hurt. But Steve Clifford is not going to rush this guy at all. That is antithetical to how Steve Clifford believes anything should happen. You're young, do not play. That's how he runs. And Miller isn't good enough to force his hand, I don't think. And even if he was to start, there's still Ball and Rozier, maybe Hayward, Washington, who will all have the ball in their hands too. And it's not like Miller is, I'm really selling this, aren't I? It's not like Miller is here providing a bunch of ancillary numbers, but the Bridges arrest, warrant, whatever it is, has opened up a little bit more of a crack of a pathway for Miller. And the fact that he is the number 2 overall pick means at some point there's going to be clamoring like, can you play this bloke more than 20 minutes? And I don't know whether they give into it, but, or maybe, the other thing is, maybe he's just good and I'm wrong. The draft capital does mean something. So the fact that they perhaps wasted pick number 2 on him means that they're still going to give him every opportunity to show that maybe it wasn't a waste. And Gordon Hayward is not particularly adept at staying upright the whole time. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Snap into action this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. When you place a $5 bet, that's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. You can check all of the money lines, the spreads, the totals for all of the NFL action for this week, but you can also check, speaking of Brandon Miller, the odds for the upcoming NBA season and the Charlotte Hornets odds to make the playoffs. No, minus 1,400. Yes, plus 680. They were in the play-in 2 years in a row before Melo got hurt. Could they do that? Sure. Plus 680. I don't know. Maybe you just have to. Maybe it's hard to believe in a franchise with as many loose morals as the Hornets, but that doesn't matter. FanDuel's got whatever you want. So go to FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, an official partner of the NFL, and don't forget to gamble responsibly. That brings us into the next one, which is we're going back to Utah with number 12, and I am looking at the speaker himself, Keynote George, who is ranked 230th on Yahoo, 184 on ESPN, and 425 on Fantrax. I did not like what I saw from George at Baylor. He was an indiscriminate, poor shot selection chucker, and they didn't go in. He was a little overweight. He banged up his ankle. He just didn't thrill me at all. And in Summer League, he looked very different, and he looked awesome. And I'm happy to change some of my priors. And then in preseason, he looks like their best point guard. So I'm like, all right, I'm in. Sort of, to a degree. Now, he might literally start the season out of the rotation. It would be silly, but there is Horton-Tucker, Sexton, Clarkson, Dunn, and Abaji playing the 1 and the 2. I do not believe it will take as long as Christmas before he is starting a la Donovan Mitchell. Now, Mitchell had a path where Rocket Rodney Hood was in front of him, and as soon as Hood got hurt, which didn't take long, Mitchell took over, started, and that was that. The difference with George is we're just waiting for them to realize that THT sucks or Sexton's not a point guard. We all realized this 2 years ago. Maybe you didn't, but there is a clear bet on talent pathway here for George where you go, surely they figure it out. Now, he might come in like most guards as a rookies and suck balls. Like, he might be terrible. But I'd rather take the chance of him being a top 120 player, top 100 player for 20 weeks versus maybe Horton-Tucker starting for 2. But am I just biased against Horton-Tucker? I guess that's something you guys have to think about as well. What is my agenda? I don't have an agenda. But how do I view these players? And then do you view it the same way? How does it align with other people? Let's go to Chicago. This one's an obvious one, but maybe it shouldn't be. Because Patrick Williams sucks. Sorry, he does. But a top 4 pick, a starting player, a 4th-year breakout, surely something happens. I don't know. He's ranked 129th on Yahoo, 161 ESPN, 145 Fantrax. I don't know when he is going to get usage. Usually when everyone is out, he can actually show a little bit of ramping it up. But he needs to be a stand in the corner, work on defense thing, and then when other guys are there, he gets like scared. Scared's the wrong word, but just won't fire. And there is still upside in him, but how quickly will it be before Billy Donovan goes, bro, you're getting outplayed by a journeyman power forward again, like last season with Javonte Green? I wouldn't be surprised. I actually pulled him straight early in the game yesterday against Toronto and put Torrey Craig in because Billy Donovan's like, bro, what are you doing? And that's the problem with Williams. Again, I'm really not selling you on this, but a 4th-year breakout player who's a starter with 1 steal, 1 block, 2 threes, upside, 14.6 rebounds, best case maybe. That's useful enough for me. The 10th guy on this list, we're into the top 10. Speaking of top 5 picks who have sucked, Jalen Suggs, who I was pretty big on as a draft prospect. His shooting has been atrocious. He is now in year 3. But unlike Patrick Williams, Jalen Suggs has something to hang his hat on. His dick. No, he's got... I don't even know why I said that. Jalen Suggs is absolutely, let's say, worst case scenario, an above average guard defender. But he's better than that. He's an awesome defender. He might bring Matisse Thybulle level defensive stats as a starter. And he is starting. The problem will be, does he shoot 40% with 9 points? Or does he get to 45% and give you 14 points next to Markelle Fultz? If he can turn into a 34% shooter, it's huge. But I feel much more confident in looking at Suggsy as a starter than I was, when I talked to Philip Rossman-Reich of Locked On Magic back in August. He's like, maybe they go with Gaz Harris just for shooting. but it doesn't appear that it's going to be anything like that. It's going to be Suggs. He's going to have the opportunity to win that role and lock into it, and that's good because those defensive stats with some offensive upside, it's year 3 too. Hopefully something clicks. Suggsy is an option for you. The 9th player on this list, and I have this guy unbelievably high in my dynasty rankings, in my dynasty rookie rankings. He's at number 3, just a bee's dick behind Scoot at 2, and it's a Men Thompson. So why is he down at number 9? Let's go through his rankings first, and then I'll tell you. Spooky. Just really keeping the suspense going. 161 on Yahoo, 147 for a Men on ESPN, and 429 on Fantrax for Mr. Thompson here. Why do I have him at 9? Well, I look at a Men Thompson and I watch him play and I go, this guy is amazing. I think he is going to be an absolute stud. Superstar, I'm not sure, but he's going to be unbelievable. His athleticism is ridiculous. His defensive ability and positioning and what's the right word? It's like your ability to see something before it happens. I can't think of the name. Precognition. Shout out to Minority Report. He always knows where to be on both ends of the court. And he is a guy that, in his prime, I think can be 18, 6, 6, 2, 1. Points, rebounds, assists, steals, blocks. The shooting is going to be a problem. But why is he at 9? That's building the tension. Why is he at 9? Well, because I don't know when he's going to get the minutes. Fred VanVleet, Jalen Green, Dylan Brooks are going to play the 1, 2, and the 3. They, for some reason, signed Reggie Bullock. Now, I am of the opinion that Amen is going to come in and he's going to look so good that they're going to go, we have to. Like, what are we doing here? He has to play. But how does he do it? Over $80 million legend Fred VanVleet? Over number 2 pick Jalen Green? Over, well, not $80 million. Fred VanVleet was 140 or whatever. $80 million legend Dylan Brooks? Kevin Porter's gone, so that's out of the way. Amen probably gets 20, but what's the path to 30? Because if he had a path to 30, he'd be number 1 here. And he wouldn't even be in this mix because he wouldn't be going this late if he was starting. But he's not, so we put him here. Hope that makes sense. Jaden Ivey. Much like we look at Suggs as starting, I think Ivey's coming off the bench. I don't really think there's a debate about it. He's at 151 on Yahoo, but on the other 2 sites, he's actually ranked pretty high. 113 on ESPN and 58 on Fantrax. Fantrax, my guys, what's going on? 58? Anyway, that's insane, clearly. But when you come off the bench and the guys in front of you are Cade Cunningham, Asar Thompson, Bojan Bogdanovic, it's not one of those where Keith Bogans is starting in front of you and he plays 10 minutes and you play 33 coming off the bench. Those other guys are going to get a fair chunk of minutes, so Ivey's upside gets capped a little bit. Now, he had his best success last season when he was running the team without Cade there and without Killian Hayes. He might actually have to still share the court with Hayes in that second unit. And the upside is capped a little bit. But will the extra ball handling responsibilities and extra usage in that second unit help him maintain value? Or do they just say, no, he's actually got to go back to starting. He's dominating here and we actually have real faith in him being a good player. And I do still have faith in him being a good player. So he's slid a little bit, but that means you can get him in round like 13 because of that bench role. We'll go to Washington now, and let's look at BILAL COULIBALY. Those rankings are insane. 587 on Yahoo. You might want to update them. 404 on ESPN and 433 on Fantrax. I would say at this point, he is the favorite to start at small forward for the Wizards. And 4 weeks ago, I would have said there's no chance that happens. I don't know whether he will. Denny Avdia's missed some time in preseason. He hasn't played a game yet, as far as I know. But Bilal is doing amazing defensive things. Now, I don't think he's going to be a 30-minute-a-night guy. He's not going to be a scorer. But he might be a really, really strong defensive stats guy, Matisse Thybulle, with a little bit more shooting and passing upside. But that's what we're swinging for, isn't it? A rookie who might just honestly put up amazing defensive stats with a role that is there and might grow. And if it doesn't work, we move on. And we don't hold forever. We take a swing and we move on. After Bilal, who was number 7, this guy is number 6. Can you guess who it is? You don't have to wait long if you can't guess. It's Jalen Johnson in Atlanta. I do not know whether Jalen Johnson is going to start. But I'll tell you what I also don't know is whether DeAndre Hunter is going to play opening night because he's had a knee problem. Sadiq Bey is also in the mix. Bey come off the bench last game. Johnson started. There's lots of different ways they can go, but Johnson has flashed. Now, to be honest, his last game was bad. but he's had some shooting games, some scoring games, some rebounding games, some passing games, some defensive games. A guy that might, even in 24 minutes, could he have 10, 5, 3, a steal and a block? Maybe. His versatility is key. He can play as a 4. He can play a little bit as a 5. He won't do much as a 5, though. I love the upside. I love what he's done. It's year 3 for JALEN, and I think this is a real time to break out. It is not the clearest path to start, so if they do go into the season and he plays like 18 minutes opening night, I'd probably only give it a few games. But if he goes in and is off the bench and he plays 27 and Bay plays 22 and Johnson's firing, then you love it. You don't grab that. That guy doesn't exist on the waiver wire very much. That is what we use these last round picks for. Let's grab it. Let's take the flyer. Let's preempt the opening night blow-up player. And it might be him. It might not. And we might drop him straight away. But it might be. The next player is a guy that is probably not quite as good as the fully realized Jalen Johnson for this season. But the chances of him doing it are probably higher. And that is the starting center in Dallas, DERECK Lively II. He is, for some reason, at 537 on Yahoo. He's got an ESPN rank of 163, very, very reasonable, and 452 on Fantrax. Now, DERECK Lively had a lot of struggles at Duke last season. He is a guy, though, that fantasy translation of his stats from Duke made him look amazing. It was not quite that good, but even if he's playing 20 minutes, and honestly, he's been blocking 2 shots in 20 minutes in many preseason games. And once you get outside of round 10 in a fantasy draft, in a 12-teamer, there is nobody as a center with blocks upside. Like Jalen Smith, no. Isaiah Jackson, no. I don't even know if they're going to play. Orlando Robinson, sure. It takes an injury, right, for this stuff to happen. For Lively, it doesn't. All he needs to do is start, which I think he will. And if that 20 minutes turns to 25, then that upside is there. Or if he starts and struggles and gets benched, you drop him. But that upside big man, it's him and it's nobody else. There is nobody else who is that guy who has a path to starting, because that brings me on to the next player who's at number 4 on this list, and that's the big fella in Philadelphia. Now, the Sixers team is just up shit creek. I don't know what's going on. I couldn't tell you what's happening with Jim Harden at the moment. Hey, if I want to throw let's do a quick side note. In a deep league, Jaden Springer, big steals guy, improved shooter, okay passer, and if Harden doesn't play and they don't make a trade straight away, Springer might have to be in the rotation and play 20 minutes, maybe. Keep an eye on him. But Paul Reed's what we're looking at here. He's at 148 on Yahoo. He's not ranked on ESPN, which is nonsense. And he's 232 on Fantrax. But remember, early in the mock draft and the drafting season for us here, people heard me say, hey, let's look at Paul Reed in the last rounds. And they went, all right, that means we get him at 90. No, you do not. You absolutely do not. And some of that buzz has faded. There is an outside chance he starts instead of PJ Tucker. There is a bigger chance that he is the primary backup behind PJ Tucker and Joel Embiid. I think it's pretty clear he's ahead of Mo Bamba. Nick Nurse has had lots of positive comments about Reed. His preseason has been a little up and down, but he has got the highest permanent upside basically out of every player on this list. So we grab him in the later rounds. We see what the role is. If it doesn't work out, I'll see you later. But there's just so much uncertainty there, he cannot be undrafted. Number 3 on this list is the guy that I now believe will be the starting point guard for the San Antonio Spurs, and that is Jeremy Sochan. He has started the last 2 games as the starting point guard, and the game today, which is currently going on, has their full starters out there. He is one of them. Trey Jones is not. If Sochan is the starting point guard, is he going to be whipping around, dropping 8 assists a game? Probably not, but maybe 4.5. Ball in his hands helps with the shooting as well. Probably bumps his minutes up from the 26 a game he played last season. He's ranked at 155, 136, 140, Yahoo, ESPN, Fantrax, respectively. He looks like he'll start at point guard. You take the flyer on a young upside point guard player with weird size and defensive ability and who can rebound. You take that chance. Speaking of starting point guards, at number 2, I'm taking Coby White. 170 on Yahoo, 139 on ESPN, 171 on Fantrax. He will be the opening night starting point guard for the Bulls. Is that 25 minutes so that Caruso and Dosunmu and Carter play? Maybe. Or is it 33 minutes and he is considered along with Levine and DeRozan as key parts of the offense? He was awesome down the stretch last season, and I talked about this, I think, with Dan Besbris today on his show, and I said, I've referenced plenty of times that down the stretch of last season, DeRozan and Vooch saw their production tail. Well, that's because this guy's production rose. Would they prioritize White over those players? No, that's not exactly what I mean. But it just means that instead of having Dosunmu out there, who's an absolute zero offensively, having someone who can shoot and is probably their best shooter means that he takes a couple of shots away from those guys. And he's shown some passing ability. Starting point guard, offensive upside, Coby White, we do it. The number one guy on this list, who I can't believe is actually still on this list, is Humpty Dumpty, Bennedict Mathurin. He's at 134 on Yahoo, 134 on ESPN, 128 on Fantrax. I know that Mathurin was very empty as a player last season. The number one, if you want one takeaway is why you should take a flyer on Bennedict Mathurin, he's going to play 5 extra minutes a game. He played 28 minutes a game last season. And as a rookie, he got to the line at an insane amount. And late in drafts, you cannot find a player who influences free throw percentage as much as he does. If we just get a slight uptick in efficiency and starts hitting threes at like 34 instead of 32%, or he gets you 4 assists instead of 1, or whatever he was doing, and maybe generates a steal, just those extra 5 minutes, a 20 point per game upside scorer, a 2.5 threes per game upside player, a 4 assist and 85 on 5.5 attempts, 6 attempts from the line player is so important. Now, when he did have some starts towards the end, with the free throw rate dropped and usage, all that sort of thing. But you take that flyer on him. That level of player, the free throw influencer with high usage scoring upside, who's going to start in year 2 getting a 5-minute bump, is a very important piece to look at. And he's a guy you take a swing on in those last rounds. And that, all you legends, is the end of the show. Follow this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and on the Odyssey app. And if you are here on YouTube, I think you know what to do. You drop a comment down below, you hang your hat on it, you ring the bell, and you hit subscribe. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.